Well, it was 4 years ago today since I've taken this picture. And this is what I look like now. I'm not gonna lie, I'm surprised this shirt still exists, but I don't think it's gonna make it to the 5 year mark. Oh well, I like these pajamas better anyway. So, as per usual, I like to make a bit of an extravaganza whenever I get to the year mark. And this time is no exception. The way it's gonna go, this first segment is going to be me just kind of going over the major events that happened this month. And then from there, I will be going into a few other sections. An interesting tier list, some general advice, and a bit of a literary review that's very trans spirit of things. You'll see what I mean when I get to that point. So, this month, the first thing to mention is that there was a fair bit of travel going on. The first was for pleasure, and the other was for business. The first place I went to was Salem, Massachusetts. And I gotta say, if you're trying to figure out a city that's very Rainbow Alliance positive, Salem is a very good choice. I saw just rainbow flags everywhere. In fact, there were rainbow flags on the sidewalk, as well as trans flags on the sidewalks, and then there was even shops dedicated to those, questioning their gender, as well as all this other stuff. It was really quite jarring. I guess there's something about witches and people that are part of the Rainbow Alliance. There's an association for some reason. I think back to this Reddit area. I forget what the actual term for it is, but it's just called Witches versus the Patriarchy, and maybe that kind of leads into that. And I guess there's something about the idea of witchcraft kind of existing outside of the norm of what people know, much like how people in the Rainbow Alliance do. It was a very fun trip. And the thing that was really interesting about it was went with a whole bunch of friends from high school. One that I hadn't seen in about, probably 8 years at this point. We kept correspondence on Discord and whatnot, so they all knew that I was a woman, obviously. But yeah, it's all my guy friends from high school, and I was the only girl. Thankfully, I was just one of the guys, basically. I just looked a little differently, and that's the way I wanted it. If you ever get the chance, Salem, Massachusetts, it's a lot of fun. But I could definitely say, because we tried to cram in so much in just a few days, it felt like you could see the whole town, maybe in 2, maybe 3 days. If you're really pushing it, you could probably do it in a day and a half. But it was a lot of fun, and I was very happy I was able to go there. And like I mentioned, the second trip was for business. This was for bottom surgery. It was a fair ways away from town. Thankfully, I had an uncle to stay with, because unfortunately, it was a few back-to-back doctor's appointments. 2 I was able to have on the first day, but I had to go an extra day for the third appointment. And it was nice to have a relative to definitely lean on, but it really put into perspective. So this appointment was just to try to figure out the details of bottom surgery. And the main thing they told me is they wanted me to remain within, say, a 30-mile radius of the hospital for 3 weeks. I spent about 3 days with my uncle, and, yeah, let's just say we're 2 very different people. It's nice when we're able to get together to visit every so often, but when it comes to living with him for a little bit, I'm not sure if I can do that for 3 weeks. So it really kind of put me down the rabbit hole as to what I'm supposed to do in that time. But probably the thing I found the craziest about that appointment was, so I spoke with the surgeon, and they're just yeah, you got a date in mind, you want to do this? I kind of figured this would be something that'd be booked solid for like, I don't know, a year and a half or something. They'd give me the date and then I would have to figure out all the details to go around that. But no, the ball was in my court. And I'm kind of having jitters about it. It's one of those things where, like, if I had all my affairs in order, I would just love to just do it tomorrow. But I don't have my affairs in order. The first thing is where I'm going to stay for those 3 weeks. Like I said, I'm going to have to do a little bit of looking around. And since it's in a big city, I'm going to need to rely on some relatives or something because even a roach motel is probably going to be very expensive. And the other big thing is this doctor was requiring me to go through laser hair removal of the area first, which I'm already in the process of doing. I figured it was going to be some time, so I figured I might as well get a step ahead. But I still got to finish 2 more sessions. One more is happening in October, and I'm not sure when the last one is. And it's only at that time, at the earliest, can I go under the knife. My resolve is just as heavy as ever. But for me, I'm like, you're requiring me to take 3 months off of work? I could try, but I'm not really sure if I'm gonna be able to do that. And then I have to stay within the 50-mile radius of the hospital for 3 weeks. But then again, they did also tell me that 3 months was a bit more on the extreme side, like if there was some sort of infection and whatnot. And obviously, there's going to be some maintenance work for a little while that I have to take care of. I'm not going to go into details, just in case any of you have squeamish stomachs. But yeah, it's exciting, the idea that such a thing could very much become a reality. But at the same time, I feel a lot like I'm in a video game where I just accidentally stumbled upon the last boss, and I know I'm not equipped for this. So I'm just trying to figure out what other stuff I need to be able to prepare for such a final boss fight. There's only really 2 more things I have to mention from this chair. So, as I was there for the consultation, there was a lot of like downtime, obviously. So went out to eat with my uncle. We kind of discussed like my details with like a few friends and whatnot. And along the way, I mean, they're all very like Rainbow Alliance accepting. I want to make that perfectly clear. Along the way, there is just this sentiment that I just hear all the time saying those that are trans are like really brave. I don't I have a very hard time gelling with this philosophy. I don't really see it so much as bravery. I just seen it as I've had enough. It's like the equivalent of calling somebody brave because that one dark spot that has been in the bathroom for 3 years they can't take anymore, so they finally take some bleach to clean it away. It feels more along the lines of taking care of something I should have taken care of years ago rather than like fighting a system that's working against me. But then again, maybe I should count myself lucky that I don't feel like I'm fighting against the system. I will admit, it's kind of annoying that such a thing is stuck behind a paywall, but it's all within my budget. At the very least, I'm making it within my budget because, dang it, this is important. A lot of people say the idea that money can't buy you happiness, but I can say money can definitely buy you peace of mind. And the last thing to mention as well was occasionally I peruse around and I run into some fun trans or egg memes. Sometimes I'm able to laugh, sometimes I'm given a bit of philosophy. This one definitely fell on the philosophical side. In all honesty, I don't really think I agreed with either. I think I realized what the thing is. At the time, that this not feeling right, it's hard to really call it dysphoria, but more really wanting to be a woman started to come around. It wasn't so much that, like, I cared that people saw me as a man. I rather liked that because, well, let's be honest, being seen as a man is being seen as more like the superior. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why people that are trans masc are a little more easily acceptable, because a lot of people see it as, oh, well, it would make sense. I mean, you're born the inferior gender and you want to become the superior one. Now that's understandable. But yet, someone in my circumstance, I'm kind of seen as more like, wait a minute, so you got the fame, the prestige, you got all this great stuff, and you're throwing all that away just so you can look pretty. I really don't care about the whole male privilege. In fact, I remember I was talking to a friend about that. I find the idea of male privilege is very much a double edged sword. On one hand, you're seen as the superior gender, but because of that, you're expected to do everything. Times are hard. You're not allowed to cry. You're short. Well, you're a defective human. You're really open about your feelings. Why don't you join all the other gay people? These are not the feelings I have. These are just the general feelings that I've picked up through my sentence as a man. But anyway, I'm really getting off topic. Really, I think the main thing was I just wanted to have the body of a woman, but I still wanted people to see me as a man. And I think really the main reason for that was I just have a very hard time with people seeing me as weak. And masculinity was always equated with strength, and femininity was either submissiveness or weakness. So, I guess if I were to give an answer to the comic, if it was like 16-year-old me, are you a man that wants to have the body of a woman? That's basically it. I didn't really care about this idea of femininity or not. In fact, it was something I've tried to purge from my system because I got made fun of a lot for showing any sort of feminine side. And as for the other side, where it's just like, are you a woman that's just trapped in a man's body? I never really agreed with that either. I was perfectly fine growing up as a boy. It's just when I became a man, I hated it. I wanted to be a woman. So at least that's my interpretation. In fact, I remember I shared this comic with a friend, and she kind of told me I was rather overthinking it. It seemed like it was just kind of presenting two of the major ideologies. It's just like, did you see yourself as a man that wanted to be a woman, or did you see yourself as a woman that felt like they had a bunch of hurdles to jump through before they could become a woman? And I guess I'm definitely more like on the man's side there. Well, for the most part anyway, because I do want to be seen as a woman now. I do want to be seen as feminine. And maybe a part of that is because I felt like I said, I purged that part out of my system for a while, that now I can actually embrace it. I can tap into a part that's just always been there, but I was too proud to keep a hold of. Maybe that first option is sounding more correct. I found another manga that brought in a very different perspective. It's called Until I Become Me. This is the story of Akira. And this is something that's definitely plagued me since I discovered Oni-chan is done for. I wondered if Japanese names were gendered or not. Well, after reading this one, I have found that there aren't really any gender-specific names. Either that or maybe I just associate Akira with like a very manly name as opposed to something that could work for somebody that was feminine, but anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. Like I said, this manga is the story of Akira, a small little boy who wants to be a man's man. And the best way he can think about doing that is to basically torment all the girls in his class. Well, after one particularly brutal session of bullying, Akira got a very ironic punishment. He wakes up as a girl. Akira's mother rushes him to the hospital to find that it's idiopathic sex change syndrome, which I just love the name of that. And as of now, there is no cure for this disease. At school, Akira returns as a girl. The boys make fun of him just like he used to make fun of the girls, and the girls now want an apology. However, due to his stubborn male pride, he is not going to give them the satisfaction. Without the girls to protect him, the boys do some very horrible things to Akira. And I can definitely see how some people would probably be turned off by this particular section, especially being so early on in the story, but I think it is a very vital part of the story. It really shows the motivation behind Akira's actions. The event was so traumatizing that Akira basically had to move to another school because there was just no way he could continue living like that. And to make matters worse, his dad, after seeing this, basically just left. And as such, it's a single mother as well as his grandmother looking after him. At his new school, he very much presents in a more boyish fashion that all the other girls are ready to kind of point out. So he has to kind of compromise. He used to keep his hair short because he liked that masculine look, but now he's had to start growing it out, starting to like more girl hobbies, trying to be friends with the girls because, well, there's just no way he could be friends with the boys after what the last group of boys did to him. And one of the interesting things about the story is they offer a different option. A school for those questioning their gender. Is this a thing? This would be amazing if this was actually a thing. And that gives Akira the option of being able to present male, even though his body is presenting female. But along the way, it becomes a bit less trying to play a part, and a little more about he's actually kind of enjoying this new life for himself. He kind of likes being a girl. And the main reason I like to say this gave me an interesting perspective is, how would my life have been if somehow I was already a girl before I ever felt dysphoria? I get the feeling, obviously, I would have been happy as a girl, but I think having to spend that sentence of being a man is really put in the perspective as to why being a girl is so good. Because I had to deal with years of not being this way, and now that I have that misery to compare with this happiness, the happiness I think is even more so than if I was just born a girl or if somehow I magically swapped genders like Akira did. It's a bit of an interesting thing. I do remember this is kind of a philosophical question people pose to trans people. If you could start over your life all over again as your preferred gender, would you? To which I'd have to say no. Not only for that perspective, but I feel like I just wouldn't be me if I was just a girl from the start. I don't think I would have ever gotten into video games if I would have been able to make the same friends I would have. I would have a completely different life. And, well, when it comes to this whole idea of parallel universe stuff, it's hard to say if that life would have been better than what I currently have. In fact, this is really the big thing about the manga. It's really about identity. And so much of Akira's identity was being the man's man. And now that he really can't do that anymore, he has to adjust to being a woman. And while there was definitely a lot of resistance at first, he's actually kind of liking being a girl. However, that's kind of the issue, is that it's hard for him to be himself, as he made a very big deal about wanting to go back to being a boy again, but now that he'd rather stay as a girl, it's a very difficult thing for him to be able to tell his mother and his grandmother about. And the main reason I like to bring up this manga is it really made me think about how I would have reacted if I was in a very similar situation. Granted, I wasn't that obsessed with being a man like Akira was, but I was perfectly content with being a boy, so the idea of, like, how would my life have been if I just randomly transitioned before I even knew I was trans? Along the way, I probably would have been just like Akira. Very hesitant to it at first, but after a while, just kind of going like, you know, I don't hate this. I wonder why. And then eventually kind of getting to the point of, I like this. But probably the two biggest things I can think of that speak to the trans experience is he ends up befriending a cis girl that likes a more masculine hobby, a trading card game, which is obviously a ripoff of Yu-Gi-Oh! And she offers a very different perspective to what Akira had been hearing. The idea that you can like whatever you want, regardless of what gender you are. But the other big thing as well is that Akira feels in order to have a deeper relationship with his friends, he feels like he has to tell them the truth about his past self. And that is very much a pain when it comes to the idea of coming out. In fact, even just trying to tell his parents that he wants to remain a girl, that is also very relatable. And all along the way, I'm just like, just tell them. And I'm like, yeah, I was in the same exact boat when I tried to tell my dad about this. There is just one last thing I wanted to mention. When you're trans, things are no longer set in stone. In addition to presentation, there is also sexuality. Something that I'm also struggling with. As of now, the manga is still ongoing, but what is available, I think, ends at a pretty good spot until the next available installment gets in. If you ever get the chance, I highly recommend it. Well, this was a very interesting idea that I saw from Ava Through Fire, a tier list on trans femme stereotypes. Basically, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to see what the various aspects that she put in place was, and critique them, see how they relate to me. This should be interesting. Without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, well, let's see what we got here. Always online. Well, this is something I'd like to think I'm better than, but, well, I don't really have cable, and it feels like YouTube is my main source of entertainment, so I'm gonna give that a, yeah, ooh, woo, or whatever this symbol is. Maybe that's just a winking sign. Self-esteem? What's that? No. My self-esteem has gone up a lot since transitioning, which is very impressive as, well, I mean, I guess I kind of had self-esteem before, but now I'm kind of to the point of like, you know what? I don't care. I want to be happy, and now I am. So pretty, except for me, of course. I would definitely give that a fair. I definitely have a lot of gender envy. It's kind of funny being a lesbian. Whenever I see women, it's a mixture of, dang it, she's so pretty, how does she do it so naturally, and wow, I would like to be really good friends with her. Which I guess this moves on to the next thing. After 10 minutes of meeting somebody, you want to make out with them. I will admit I'm a bit more touch-starved, it seems. Maybe it's because now I can actually feel a hug and enjoy it. But, yeah, I'm not really the kind of person that just wants to go all over people like this. That feels very much like an invasion of personal space, and, well, I was never really given consent when it comes to hugs in the past, and dang it, I don't want anyone to do that to me. I'm gonna put that under no. Blowhigh, or as I've heard some people say, blahage. Yeah, that's basically all I can say about it. Obviously put that under, oh my gosh, yes. Neurospicy. Oh boy, where do I begin with this? Well, how about I just start with, I hate how this term of neurodivergent is thrown out like money at a casino. Somebody's memorized the entire discography of Iron Maiden. Neurodivergent. Somebody has a very hard time with eye contact. Neurodivergent. Somebody wants to watch out for cracks in the sidewalk. Neurodivergent. And one of the main reasons I hate that this is thrown around so much is I feel like it invalidates people that legitimately are neurodivergent. One such person is my second oldest brother. This is not something I like to bring up as, well, it's a part of my life that I'd rather forget. Because of his inability to communicate, he would often turn to violence. And, well, there's a whole lot of other things that only now am I starting to unpack during therapy. People say they're neurodivergent. I'm like, you're not him. You can live in the real world. You might have a bit of a problem paying attention or maybe a few other things, but you don't need to live in a home with constant supervision because you're just not somebody that could take care of themselves. And that is especially a label that I do not want to be put on me. I am not him. I can hold down a full-time job. I can pay my bills. I can make my own food. I can talk to people. All the things that my brother, which is neurodivergent, cannot do. And for this, I am putting this under a big no. Celeste. Well, I will admit, it's a good game. I don't think it's necessarily the trans classic that everybody says it is. In all honesty, I feel like the doppelganger should have been male. That would have definitely sold the trans allegory. The idea that you kind of have to make peace with your past self and your present self in order to become a better person and achieve that next level. And plus, it did remind me a lot of the times where in junior high and high school I loved playing some of the more brutal 8 and 16-bit games. So, I'm just going to put it under fair because I do not have the time or the patience to get all those strawberries, and then people tell me that there's golden strawberries to take care of. I'd rather spend my attention with Cuphead or this new game coming up, Mouse. Monster. I don't get it. I don't like energy drinks. And this is the main thing I've found, is caffeine affects me very differently now. Before I would just have it and nothing would change. Now I have it and one of three things would happen. Either not really anything changes, I immediately want to go to bed, or I'm just like really wired for the rest of the day, which it's nice when that actually happens. Well, actually, no, there is a bit of a fourth option. There are times where it just raises my blood pressure and that's it. Nothing about my alertness or anything. Skirt go spinny. I'm gonna need to test this out to make sure. I maybe give it like a 3 out of 5. Yeah, I'm gonna put that under that fair category. Programming. I took 3 different languages in college. C, C++, and Java. And the main thing I learned is that I am awful at coding. The best way to put it into perspective is if I was given a week to do the assignment, it would take me about 6 days, 23 hours, and 59 minutes to figure out that a plus really needed to be a minus, or a closed bracket needed to be an open bracket, or some other such thing. So, yeah, no. Survival games. Not really. Used to play a little Minecraft back in high school. If anybody remembers MC Edit, that was kind of the big thing, but, no. Gay! Well, as I've stated before, I am a lesbian. Yeah. Cats. I'm really a dog person in all honesty. There's only really been one cat I ever met that I kind of liked, but they were basically a dog anyway, so no. Cat girl. I'm not gonna lie, this one kind of confuses me. I don't know if it's saying I want to be a cat girl or to be with a cat girl. If it's being one, no. Personally, I'd say let's make dog girls a thing. But I basically just want to be a human girl. I don't want animalistic adaptations. Although I will admit it would be fun to have cat's eyes. That would really freak people out. So, as I'm not really sure which one, I think a halfway in the middle would be, no. Plushies. Yeah, I'll admit I've got a few of them. This is the one thing I've found is hugging feels really good now. And it's nice to be able to have something that I can squeeze. In fact, it feels like this is the only way I can fall asleep now, is I need to have, like, a big stuffed animal or some sort of pillow just to be able to hug it. It just makes falling asleep so much easier. So, yes, definitely. Put that up at the top. Webcomic artist. Well, I've tried my hand at drawing a few times. I can be good at laying out a good trans comic, which I've actually had a friend do for me, but it's just not really something I'm able to do myself, so no. A taste for heavy metal. Well, this one's a little difficult for me, as I do really like the soundtrack of Twisted Metals 3 and 4. However, I do have cousins that are pretty big metalheads, and they claim that Rob Zombie is like the cancer of that genre. They're also big fans of Slipknot, so I'm not really sure if maybe that might be going into their distaste for Rob Zombie. I'm really a bigger fan of just like classic rock, maybe some of like the 80s hair bands. Well, actually, no, most of the 80s hair bands are being played to death at this point. AC/DC, Whitesnake, Bon Jovi. It's just getting a little too much for me, but, heavy metal. I'm gonna put that under the, fair category. Furry. No. Sad hoodie. I mean, I actually haven't really worn a hoodie since I've started transitioning. I have a lot more confidence in my body now, so I feel like I don't need to do that anymore. So, no. No, I do not. I wish I could be a girl. Well, I mean, I kind of am one already. In fact, that's usually how the events go. If I ever have this thought in my head, it's going to be, oh, I wish I was a... Oh, wait, I am. But what's the issue here? I'm going to put this under the, no category. Dommy Mommy. Just like the cat girl thing from before, I don't know if this is wanting to be the Dommy Mommy or to be with a dummy mommy. But I guess in both cases, I'm fine with it. Yeah. Be nice to be a dummy mommy. I would totally rock a Dark Queen cosplay. Or something even a little more subtle, like, say, Ivy from Soul Calibur. But as for being with one, well, I do love the, like, whole goth girl aesthetic, but I'm not really sure if that necessarily goes hand in hand with the Dami Mommy. I think this is another one I'll just have to put in the middle. It's probably fair. Eepee. And for those of you that don't know this kind of, I don't know, Gen Z terminology, it basically means sleepy, but it's said in like a lolly way, so it's like eepee. Well, I will admit, I am a bit more sleepy since I've started HRT, but, well, at the same time, because of this, I'm able to have a lot more consistent of a sleep schedule. Like, there are many weekends where I find myself waking up at the same time and wake up to go to work anyway, and I'm just like, wow, this is annoying. Now I have like a good hour and a half before I need to go anywhere or do anything. As for being tired, well, it's hard to say if that's necessarily a trans condition or if because work has been a little difficult or if I perhaps haven't had a good diet that week. Could be a lot of things. I think I'll put this under the fair. Disaster lesbian. I have legitimately no idea what this means. I mean, I know what it means to be a lesbian. You're a girl that likes other girls. But what makes you a disaster? Because, like, your life is falling apart, you don't have a job? Or is it because as soon as you find a pretty girl, you just can't talk to her? Is that what the disaster is? I'm just gonna put that under, no, because, yeah, I don't know. Feel free to leave a comment to tell me what a disaster lesbian is. Being with a whole bunch of gay friends in high school. Well, let me just say, it's kind of ironic that I was the one that turned out to be trans, but, well, I don't know. It seems to be kind of almost cis male behavior to want to play as the female character and whatnot, as well as like a few other things. Only really one of my friends at this point has come out as gay. There's one that came out as bi, but no. So the idea of playing as a girl in a video game, well, if it gives me the option, I like to go for it. If I don't have the option, well, I'll probably still play the game. I mean, you've probably been seeing my Lego Indiana Jones videos, haven't I? Of course, you'll probably also notice I'm usually gravitating towards the female character as well, so, yeah. And last but certainly not the least, stretching your shirt to a level that it looks like a dress. This is one of those fun things, is that I've always been a really big fan of baggy shirts. Maybe this was a bit of an egg way of me experiencing what a dress was like, but most of the clothes I have, I mean, they're kind of long enough to be dresses already, so I never really had to stretch them. I think I'm just gonna say yeah, not so much to the stretching, but enjoying a shirt as a dress. That is something I've definitely done. So, yeah, this is my tier list. I mean, it wasn't me that created it. I've already told you who created it. But this is my interpretation of what it is. Well, I hope you enjoyed my tier list. And hey, I'd be curious to know what your interpretation of this tier list is. I'm gonna leave a link in the description of the original video that gave me this tier list because she actually had the ability to be able to make this tier list on her video. And on top of that, it's just a bit of an old college habit. You always have to cite your sources. So, this last section I have was inspired by a video that was in my recommendations, but also a story I remember hearing a while ago. Basically, there was this one person that was going on a date with a trans person, and, well, they were rather terrified of the situation. Not because of the date being trans, but because they didn't really know about the do's and don'ts about such a situation. Now, granted, I've never been on a date before in my life. Sometimes I feel a little behind in life as I'm going to be 30 next year. But that aside, I feel like I can offer a fair bit because of my trans perspective. So, this is what my advice is. Just know that, much like transitioning in general, your mileage may vary. People are not made of stone. They are more made out of clay. The idea that other people can mold them, including themselves. But anyway, enough of the deep philosophy. Let's just jump into this. If you know you're dating a person that's trans, that to me I think speaks to an idea that they're a bit open about this, but don't make this an investigation. Don't make the conversation all about their past or how in the world the process of transitioning was like. Well, this is something I would be content to talk about for hours on end, as you can tell with these videos. Not everybody is like that. For some people, this is a very traumatizing past and they don't want to be reminded of such a thing. So I'd say just stick with the usual topics. It's like, so, what are your hobbies? What do you do for work? What's your favorite food, favorite color? You know, basic icebreaker general questions. I feel like there was a better term for that, but I couldn't think of one. So like I say, not really sure exactly how this whole dating thing goes, but I always just pictured it as going out to meet somebody for the first time at a fine restaurant. Personally, I think this is something that should be talked about with the partner in question. Personally, I don't really like fancy food. I find it's very expensive and the portions are way too small. Honestly, you want to impress me? Take me out to a Chinese buffet, or perhaps to a hibachi. These are foods that I like, and I feel like there's a lot of opportunities for conversation with such an atmosphere. And probably the other thing, well, everybody kind of says chivalry is dead, but maybe this is still a bit of a habit. The idea that one of the partners needs to pick up the check for both of them. Going from personal experience, don't do this to me. I'm gonna feel very guilty about having you pay for my meal right away. It just kind of frames me a bit as a beggar, and if it was a really nice place to eat, I'd feel even more guilty that now I've just kind of ousted you of all that money. We don't live in a very good economy, so personally, I'm like, let's just both pay for each other's meals. I mean, we're adults, we can order what we like, and we don't have to feel guilty about it. Well, at least only as guilty as our pocketbooks would allow. I'd say, generally speaking, treat the person as their preferred gender. If they're a trans woman, treat them like a lady. If they're a trans man, treat them like a man. Now, what this means can mean several different things to several different people. Going back to me personally, I want to be complimented. If I'm going to be going out on a date, odds are I might be wearing some makeup. I have a dress on that I like. I put in a lot of effort. I want it to be recognized. But at the same time, do not pick up the check for me. However, if somehow a fight were to break out, I would love for you to be my knight in shining armor. But I feel like that's kind of outside of the whole dating thing. Probably the last thing to mention is consent. And I am not talking about sex here. I'm talking about simple things. Hand-holding, hugging, kissing. Once again, people are clay. And it all depends on what circumstances form their lives. For instance, if they had a rather bad childhood, they might have a really bad association with physical contact like that. So it's definitely best to ask for such a thing first. There may be some that like to be forced upon, but I think it's just best to ask for consent in every capacity. And once again, going from personal preference, I came from a family of huggers, and I hated it. It was just an obligation. There was no emotion behind it. The only time I ever enjoyed hugging was when I was given the option to say, no, I don't want to hug you. I guess, well, we're kind of on this subject anyway. Let's jump into the idea of sex. There's definitely this general mentality that the best first date ends with both respective partners, or if you're going for a polyamorous thing, all respective partners ending up in the bedroom. Well, this may not be the case for everybody. The idea that you're out on a date already kind of says the idea that this partner or partners are not aromantic, but it doesn't say anything to the idea of if they're asexual or not. Personally, that is not my main goal. I'd say the ending of a good date would end with, well, maybe me and my partner just kind of enjoying each other's company with a cuddle puddle. Either that or it ends in a fun way, like we're at some place, we're playing video games, we're playing board games, we're just having fun enjoying each other's company. So obviously this is no exhausted list, but this is what I can throw in there from my perspective. And as per usual, everybody else may vary. I think that is probably a good place to call it a video. This was a bit of a long one, so I want to thank you for joining me all the way through. Until next time, be yourself, no matter who that is.